Today is how resilient is your business to survive what's coming? We're very pleased today to have our expert, Gary McMillan, Vice President of Technology Consulting firm Onexte. Gary today will discuss how to explore what leading businesses are doing to anticipate potential disruptions and create resiliency plans for any number of outside events that could negatively impact the business. So what we like to do in these BeTechly discovery events is we like to drive the conversation with questions. All right. We often create a question, we have some industry data, and then our expert will add some background, some color, some input, some experience to that. So for today, our first question for today's webinar, our first question is, how is cyber resiliency related to data security? Well, we all know that it is, but how much so and to what extent? So we've pulled some industry statistics today that you'll see here on the screen about the confidence that the organization has in cyber resilience. Okay. And we have some numbers here, but of course, Gary, now's your chance to perhaps add some context to these numbers and add your experience and what you're seeing as far as the relationship between cyber resiliency and data security.
Well, I'd start off with just a couple things. I mean, I look at it and go, I don't pretend to have, a knowledge of the entire audience. So kind of one of the things that I look at it and go as we step into this, and I go, well, how is resiliency related to data security? And so the first question that I look at and I go is, well, okay, what is cyber resilience? And what are the attributes of cyber resilience and what they are? And just some real quick bullet points in what I do. And I go, what are the attributes of cyber resilience? And they're, pretty easy. It's aligning information security, business continuity, and organizational adaptability. Second, it's probably, what are the attributes? Protecting the enterprise against anything that will negatively impact the, your ability, your integrity, or even your confidentiality of network IT systems and associated information, services, and data. Next, real quick, would be, developing and enabling security teams that are hyper aware and vigilant and capable of keeping the organization safe. And one of the bullet points there that's really important to me is that they don't work in a silo. That what I see way too often is that the security teams are off doing their things, and the business guys are off doing their things, and IT guys are off doing their things. And when you look at resilience, these teams need to do a better job of working together. Next, I'd say, and I always choke on this one, it's, preparing for and responding to, and how are you going to recover from cyber threats and events in a timely fashion with, most importantly, minimal disruption to your organization. And that one's one something, if we have time, I'll come back to. But, when these things occur, how do you respond properly, legally, within requirements, and don't disrupt and let it shut down, which we often refer to as, and if any of you have heard of this, MVC, and it's called minimal viable company. When this stuff goes down, you can't be out of business for a month. So how do you create a strategy and a plan to be back immediately with MVC, minimal viable company, that you can continue to conduct business? And then probably, the last thing is just being able to adapt and to known and unknown crises, threats, and what's going on, and how do you stay on top of that? What tools do you use? What partners do you use so that you're current? And that's kind of where I look at it and go, how is it related to data, all of those things, and what is truly the definition of cyber resilience?
Okay. Like, Gary, yes, it's a definitely a big word, a lot of definition. Um, why don't we move on to our next question? Why don't we do that? Okay. Um, what is often missing from disaster recovery plans today? And so we pulled some data here, but from the planning, what do you see is often missing? Uh,
You want me to take a shot at that, Jake?
Go right ahead, especially after like
If you if
the
you if you if
definitely
you've got 2 hours, let me go, but I'll make it try to quick.
we don't have 2 hours, but
What's
what is
often
missing?
missing from disaster
Mm,
recovery plans today? And first, the first thing that occurs to me is what's missing is your backups. If something's happened, you look at it and you go, oh, well, I have backups, and maybe my backups are on prem, maybe my backups are in the cloud. But what's missing is a real confidence of how current those backups really are. And in the event that you need to rely on those backups, are they easily accessible? Are they accurate? Are they current? So we look at, different things like, am I backing up in real time? Am I mirroring my data? And when you look at backups, whether they're on-prem, in the cloud, or offsite elsewhere, 22 kilometers away as they recommend, whatever, what I see a lot that scares me is that organizations have these backups. Maybe they're not as current as they should be, or maybe they really are, but those backups aren't properly encrypted. And what we're seeing is that, the bad guys have gotten smart, and they look at it and they go, we're going to go get you. And we found a way in. And you're doing all these backups and you're sending them off to AWS, but you didn't encrypt them. And so they've learned that before we tell you that we have attacked and encrypted your production environment, they snuck around the corner and they attacked and encrypted your backups at AWS or whatever else, so that when you come back and go, I'm not paying you nothing because I've got backups, and they come back and go, yeah, go look at them. I hit those first. So that's a real challenge. And then to me, the second thing that has really changed and become prevalent is what's missing from your disaster recovery is how you have an incident response program in place. And you look at it and you go, you have all these wonderful tools out there that are all these proactive tools to protect you from threats, but eventually the threat is it's going to happen. It's a broken record. It's not if, it's when. And do you have the proper disaster recovery plan in place to execute once you've identified this? And what I have seen and see again all the time, and when I ask that question, I'm working with organizations, do you have an adequate disaster recovery plan? And I hear, yeah, we all sat down in a room about 10 years ago and we created this Word document for how we're going to respond, what our incident response is. And it's this Word document, and we put it out on a shared drive. And I go, oh, you're toast. Yeah, that Word document, yeah, that's not going to work for you, not in today's world. So
mm,
one of the things that I look at and go, what's really missing from your disaster recovery plan is how you respond to an incident. And what's changed in the world of incident response is how regulated it's become. So you look at it now, and I'll just throw out a couple of quick bullets. You know, Unlike the old world today, if you have not just if you have an incident, but if you even think you might have an incident, there are regulations and guidelines that you must follow to the T. And an example, if you think you've had an incident, you're required by law to notify the local cybersecurity division of the FBI within 72 hours. And these guys don't mean 73. And it's a legal requirement. And if you don't, it's a $500,000 fine. That wasn't in your Word document out on that shared drive. And the next thing is there's a lot of laws and regulations that are in place that didn't used to be about how you respond to an incident. There are federal laws, there are state and local government laws, and you have to do things, and you have to do them in a very specific order by law. And if the Fed says if you have an incident, you are required by law to do step 1, step 2, step 3. And if you do step 1, step 3, step 2, they will fine you $500,000. It wasn't like that in the past. And these are now laws that you will be held accountable to, and they will check and double check you on them. And just as on a closing note, I would tell you, if you're an organization that works in more than one state, so you look at it and go, there's laws with the Fed, step 1, step 2, step 3, and then there are incident response laws for the state. And Texas, which is where I live, says do step 1, step 2, step 3. But your business also conducts business in Oklahoma, and their steps are not the same. And if you apply the Texas steps to Oklahoma, that's 500 grand. You blew it. And at the end of the day, these guys change this stuff almost every 30 days. How do you stay on top of that? It's almost impossible. So you look at it and go, the old Word doc doesn't cut it, but if it's of any consolation, there are automation tools and applications and software out there now that can manage all of that for you, that have direct links to the government agencies, to each and every state that you do business in. And if those guys make a change in the steps, that these applications have direct conduits and links to them, that your incident response playbook would be updated in real time, so that when you woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning and went, I need to go execute the playbook, it's current and you're covered. So those are things that are really important, but what I see are often missing from your disaster recovery plan.
Wow. Wow. So it says this definitely sounds like there's a huge gap here, and the growing complexity of these incident response plans, especially with the potential legal challenges, definitely sounds like something that a lot of businesses are just unaware of. So,
Well, I think
all
they're
right.
unaware of a lot of the things that are going on. And I just, and I've been doing this for 1,000 years, and I look at it and I go back and talk to an organization, 10 years ago and go, oh, you're going to be audited on your disaster recovery and incident response plan. And it was like, yeah, the guy's going to come in, snoop around for a while and go, you're not compliant here, you're not compliant here. And he says, I'm going to come back in a week or 2 or 3, and I need you to demonstrate to me how you've corrected these things.
Right.
That is not the case today, not even close. The guy walks in and goes, I've identified where you're not compliant, and I'm not giving you 60 seconds. You just got fined.
Yeah. I know it's a challenge, especially for smaller vendors who want to do business with larger organizations that have those audit requirements. Because
Yeah,
so yeah, good
exactly.
deal. So all right, we just looking at the time, we do have to move on. Just as a little housekeeping rule, again, we are going to take questions. You please use the Q&A feature to add some questions, and we are going to do our best after Gary finishes answering these main questions to take audience questions as well. So
And
oops,
this is the part that always scares me to death, Jake, but let's go.
all right. Okay. Right. Well, that's right. Oh, and well, I will say that if there isn't any time today to get to your question, or it's a question which probably requires a lot more time to respond, then we can always follow up afterwards. So I just want to explain that. All right. So as our third question here to spark conversation, uh, how quickly can the average backup solution restore data? Okay, so we have, oops, sorry, moved a little too quickly. So here, how quickly can the average backup solution, because you did mention those risks of the
Well, and
attacks
to
when
me,
data is not
you know,
encrypted. So how
and
would
that
this work
to
out?
me, that's kind of a trick question. So I'm going to kind of fall back and I'm going to try to make this quick. And it goes to what are you trying to accomplish? How quickly can the average backup solution restore data? And when you think about that, and you go, how quickly am I trying to do what? What you're trying to do, most importantly and most immediately, is what I mentioned earlier, MVC, minimum viable company. I need to be able to back up immediately just to stay in business. And if storage or, some old archive files or data at rest doesn't get backed up for a week, that doesn't shut my business down. But I need to understand and identify what the minimum viable company is that I need to restore from my backups so that I stay in business. And that has to be done now, today, especially if you're a really web centric or an online company who does a lot of business and transactions that way. You're looking at it and go, people are going out and trying to process an order, and I'm down. And 2 weeks is not going to cut it. I need to be back up immediately. And then if you've identified that and how you're going to do it, you might be able to do that in an hour or two or three, but it's got to be today. But there are some cool solutions out there, and I'm not going to call out companies by name, but I've played with their toys, and there are some storage solutions out there that guarantee that that they're creating immutable snapshots of data, that's your MVC data that can literally be recovered in minutes, and your business is back in business. So that's the key thing to me. And then I look at it and go, well, like I say, I've got data at rest. It's stuff that I don't look at and haven't looked at for years, but I have to keep it. Like the Fed says I have to keep emails for, what is it, 7, 10 years? Pff, who cares unless I get audited? But I don't need that backed up in an hour.
Mm.
I don't need to restore that in an hour, but I need to be back in business. So when you look at it and go, how quickly can the average backup solution restore data? You have to step back and go, restore what data? Mission critical data and minimum viable company data. And how quickly can that be? It needs to be today. And it needs to be, if not minutes, an hour, but I need to be back in business.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Gary. All right.